Hello again, everyone. You're listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Mix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Allan Dow, the president and CEO of Logility. We're going to be having a conversation about reimagining the supply chain, some of the things that are making people rethink the way they do what they do. I think this is going to be a great conversation. Allan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So I love the idea of reimagining the supply chain. I think this is a time of change, not necessarily just disruption, but a lot of the old thoughts are being re-examined, reinvigorated maybe. What does reimagining the supply chain mean to you?
Wow, it's a great question. We've been around for 50 years. I believe that we're at a point in time where the change is probably the most significant it's been since maybe 50 years ago when supply chain planning was invented and our company brought that to the marketplace. So it's an opportunity for folks to rethink the competitive nature of the world today from a supply chain standpoint, from brand standpoint, is greater than it's ever been. And we truly believe that it's not a time of just tweaking the edges, getting a little bit better, but really taking a step back and thinking about what can we do differently today to operate supply chains in a more effective and efficient way. And so for us, that's what reimagining the supply chain is about. Take a step back, think it through, and act in something that's much bigger than just a few improvements.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the forces that is asking people to rethink what they're doing is AI. But I also want to pause for a second and say there's the enthusiasm for AI, but it's also been long enough now that there are also some people saying, well, is this going to be a silver bullet or is this going to be one more tool in the toolbox? Let's talk a little bit about where you fall on that conversation.
Yeah, super. Well, first of all, there's a lot more people are understanding or at least aware of AI today. It's come into our personal world, and we've probably all tried a little bit of something around there. Particularly generative AI is a lot of fun and interesting, maybe a little bit scary. But for us at Logility, it's not new. AI has been part of our application. We've been introducing it probably more than a decade ago. So it's been an evolution. And we truly believe that it is revolutionary. It's going to make a huge difference. The technological advancements in the last couple of years have radically changed what the opportunity is in front of us. And we've been embracing it and building momentum on that in some very meaningful ways that are going to allow people to think differently about the way supply chain should operate.
Well, I'd love to get into some specifics there because I think that is the piece that most people are sort of waiting for good examples of this is actually working for us in the space. And when we talk about reimagining a supply chain, when we say what we're going to be doing differently, I think AI is in the mix. What are people using it for? Yeah,
so AI in its underpinnings is really about using computers to be smart, to help, to be more efficient, more effective. In a general sense, there's a mathematical definition of it, but for all of us that are just trying to figure out how to adopt it, that's it. It has intelligence behind it. So the beginnings were just about making the planning operations smarter, faster, more intuitive, digest the data better, correct data errors. I mean, those were the beginnings of it. And those are still foundational today. They're still in place. What's really come about more recently is the idea of generative AI. And that's the ability for us as individuals to be able to interact with those systems in a meaningful way. And we're just really embarking on the beginnings of that. And that changes fundamentally the way people work today. And I think it's a lot better for maybe the new workforce coming into play, that they see the world a little bit differently.
I'd love to expand on that a little. I think the idea of a generational change is really interesting. Again, when you think about where is the supply chain going to be 10 years from now? Well, one thing, I hope the baby boomers are finally enjoying their retirement. They've been putting it off for a long time, and someone gave me the stat, 10,000 of them retire each day. So they are finally leaving the workforce, and I have to think institutional knowledge retention is a powerful opportunity for AI, getting the next generation up to speed, maybe without that mentor who walks them around for a while. We have to train people differently and upskill them differently. Let's talk about that.
There's no doubt. If you think about the workforce, first of all, today's generation that's moving into the supply chain world, we need to find a way to attract them and keep them in the supply chain. There isn't a company today that I talk to that doesn't have openings. And as you said, there's more and more retirement going on. I'm going to end that generation probably before too long, where we'll all be exiting and enjoying retirement and handing the reins off to others. But the work experience, what they expect from work is very different. The user community of the past, when I joined this industry 25 years ago, wanted to be experts in the tool set. They wanted to really dive in deep. Today's community is far more interested in what can I get from the solution? What can I get from planning? What insights can I gather? how can I make meaningful decisions about the way we run our business using the technology to provide me insights? And of course, they all grew up with the cell phones in hand, so they're used to a different interaction or a richer environment, a more intuitive environment, more interactive environment. So that's what it brings about. That's the user experience in general. Generative AI puts that on steroids. Now I can ask the question, I can either type it, I can use my voice, I can get an interaction, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're really just beginning on that forefront.
Why don't we talk about Logility specifically? What makes you a leader in this space?
Well, I think part of that is because we started so long ago that we've been adopting it from the forefront. But at Logility, we have a philosophy that AI and generative AI needs to be built in, not bolted on. So we've made it part and parcel to the entire solution. So from that, we've been able to get some meaningful value out of the solution. So some of the challenges that people have faced is to take commercial available capabilities and try to layer it on top. And the best they get is some insights. Mm-hmm. And for us, we believe it's more than insights. That's the beginning. Get some insights. But what this technology really enables is to be able to answer the questions that you didn't even know to ask. Take action on your behalf. Make recommendations on what to do. So it's a much more immersive, which is why we call it built in, not bolted on. It's an immersive technology that allows the supply chain to operate differently, allows that user community, particularly the new user community, to be able to move more swiftly. And then on top of that, generative AI starts to democratize the supply chain planning process. In the past, again, when I joined 25 years ago, there was an elite team, a small team that used the systems, used the technology. And if anybody wanted insights, they asked the question of those people, or they asked somebody who would ask one of those people, and then the answer would communicate back, cascade back. Today, everybody in the supply chain community can get involved, can get engaged. All you need to do is be intuitive. Ask the question, you'll get an answer. Mm-hmm. So it's a much different environment, so much more collaborative.
I love the idea that you were already working with the data for years, and there were different iterations of planning that involved something like AI. And so this is just the natural next step. It's just building on what was already there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's building on what's there. It's expanding to it. Probably the biggest challenge we face today is all of us have had some sort of interaction with generative AI. If you ask it, what movie should I go to this weekend, or what should I watch on TV, or what's the right product I should buy for this, you get these crazy answers. So I think there's some fear out there about this new technology as well, and we're really overcoming that. So we've by building the solutions in, by making it part of the platform, by not bolting it on, by constraining the access of the data that it gets to. We're really tightening that up and giving true insights that are really helping people be more confident of what their interactions are and take action on what they're seeing.
So for the supply chain executive who is, I don't want to say skeptical, but maybe hesitant to attach this to their existing process, maybe they have a concern it's going to be complicated and require technical resources they don't have. Maybe it's a time issue. What are some of the things that you're saying to people who have those concerns when they're talking to Logility about when is the time to get involved?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the supply chain executive, but it's the risk officers as well, the legal organization. And the fear comes in probably maybe three ways. Number one is, are we ready as an organization to adopt this technology? Can we get value out of it? The answer to that is absolutely. At least get started. You can go as deep as you want and as rich as you want and get going, but you have to get started. The second is, how do we prevent false information? I alluded to that a minute ago. By isolating the application to the data that's resident within their supply chain planning operation, we're really only accessing information they'd otherwise get to anyway. So we're not out tapping, what's your favorite movie or what's the theme of the day. It's really gaining insights from the data they have internally. And then the third area is the risk officer, and the legal counsel is worried about intellectual property rights. And still the same thing. By putting the boundaries around it, by making it part of the solution, by not having third-party generative AI capabilities out there, that we're really controlling access to the information. So we're trying to address all those three, but that doesn't mean that the anxiety is not there. But the reality is we've thought them through, we've tackled them, and we can put a controlled environment together to help them get going. And it's only going to get better as time goes on.
It all sounds very exciting. I wonder if we can walk through some use cases, some specific applications of where this is being used right now and what people are able to do differently than they did before as they reimagine their supply chains.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's a great example. So I touched on a few of them earlier on, but just walking through the history of the application and how it's come about. So one of the challenges faced in supply chains today is the quality of the data, or maybe even the absence of data. So using artificial intelligence, we've been able to test the data, correct the data, fill in the gaps, or at a minimum, identify where the gaps are and engage an individual to help correct the data. So that way we don't get false answers, it goes faster. That's a very simple use case. On the other side of the spectrum, we talked about the user community and how they can interact. So today you literally can ask a question, in the system, either voice activated or through text, generating text. You can ask a question, and in multiple examples, the information will pull up, and then what will happen is oftentimes it will at least give background information about why that answer was given, and quite frequently we'll add to it and say, here's some more insights that you hadn't even asked. So that idea of answering the question that hasn't been asked are coming up live in the application today. It spans our entire application. So folks are getting that. And today we're actually, in the areas of network design, we're actually making recommendations. You probably should move this product flow from this area to another area to help improve the operation of the efficiency of the supply chain, make it more sustainable, make it automatic. So those are just a few quick examples of how things are happening today in the real world.
Terrific. Yeah. Maybe to wrap things up, I could ask you for some advice. I think a lot of people watching this are interested in AI, but either they don't know where to get started, or we've already talked a little bit about some of their concerns. What advice do you have for someone who is pretty sure they're going to do this, but they haven't pulled the trigger yet?
Yeah. Pick a use case. From our company at Logility, we always start the engagement from where's the value proposition? Where can we get value? So think about where in the supply chain you have blind spots. Think about where you've got gaps or trouble that you have to interact with quite frequently. Pick that example, pick one, pick two, pick three, and just get started. Just roll up the sleeves, dive in, use that as a use case, and then build on it. Don't try to tackle it all at once. A couple of use cases is the best way to go.
Fantastic. So for people who have been listening to this and probably have questions of their own, what is the best way to get more information, get in touch, start a conversation?
Rich information from us. The best way to go is to logility.com is our website. You'll find more about what I've been talking about here already. And if you want to reach out and engage with us, you can click the button and we'll be happy to engage and help find that use case.
Well, I encourage everyone to visit that website. I think it's a great resource. I think Logility is one of those companies that has been working in this space since before it was called AI, and they are still at the forefront of moving that forward as people reimagine their supply chains. Allan, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. I've been Jeff Nix. Let's do it again soon.